Join us on a tour of fascinating Jordan. This relatively undiscovered country has gifts that stagger the imagination, spectacular beauty, ruins that proclaim the legacies of many ancient cultures, and the gentle courtesy of a people who recognize the virtue of true hospitality. From Queen Alia Airport, we settle in our Hotel Philadelphia. An elegant old-world hotel, it has hosted many dignitaries throughout its decades of operation. We were pleased to arrive on a very auspicious evening, the celebration of the Day of Jerusalem. This is a time for all who hold Jerusalem in high esteem, Jews, Christians, and Arabs. Below, we see a national dance troupe practicing for the big celebration. With anticipation, we follow a group heading for the Royal Hall. Waiting for their cues outside the hall are the dancers. They're wearing costumes passed down through the generations and keeping the old dances alive. The costumes are truly beautiful, heavily embroidered in lovely patterns with regional meaning. Inside, devoted citizens crowd the huge hall. It is a glorious success.
Next day, our small group of 9 boards a minibus for an excursion to the north of Amman, the ancient ruins of the city of Jerash. Amman is called the White City because its buildings are constructed of Jerusalem stone, or white limestone. It is a very clean city in comparison to some European cities. Now it is bustling with business and industry. Amman is 95% Muslim with a 5% minority of various Orthodox and Christian faiths. Amman is 88% educated. 65% of its young women are in universities. Here is a population with 3/4 of its people younger than 50 years old. Jordan's modern history goes back to the Ottoman Empire after World War I. Then it was called Transjordan. The Gulf states were once one country. The first Arab emirate of Jordan was Abdullah, King Hussein's grandfather. Abdullah traced his ancestry to the Prophet Muhammad.
The earliest inhabitants in the land of Canaan were said to be the East Africans, who worked their way north through the Great Rift Valley. Ancient stone tools found at Pella confirm this. These people were descendants of Ham, the son of Noah. Jordan's ancient history is recorded from just before its Egyptian dominance. It begins with the patriarch Abraham, a former Semite resident of Ur in Mesopotamia, who migrated to Canaan, later called Palestine. During a famine, he went to Egypt to find sustenance. When Abraham departed from Egypt, he was given gifts from the Pharaoh, including servants. Abraham's aged wife, Sarah, insisted that he take the Egyptian Hagar for a wife to produce an heir, Ishmael. Though later banished when Sarah gave birth to Isaac, Abraham's son Ishmael married an Egyptian woman who gave birth to 12 princes. After Sarah's death, Abraham took a second wife, Keturah, and produced 6 more sons. Abraham also had concubines who birthed sons, recorded in Genesis 25. The Bible states that Abraham sent them all to the east, and they became the ancestors of the present-day northern Arabian tribes. Although the Jews and Arabs are at odds today, they are prophesied to be together in peace. Isaiah 19:24 and 25 records that in that day shall Israel be a third, with Egypt and Assyria, even a blessing in the midst of the land, whom the Lord of hosts shall bless, saying, Blessed be Egypt my people, and Assyria the work of my hands, and Israel mine inheritance.
Continuing our history, Abraham's son Isaac married Rebekah from Haran in southern Turkey. They had 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. We know from Genesis 27 that Jacob deceived Esau into giving up his birthright. When the enraged Esau threatened to kill Jacob, he fled to Haran to find a wife. Jacob acquired 2 wives, Leah and Rachel. From them and their maidservants, Jacob became the father of 12 sons the ancestors of the 12 tribes of Israel. Upon his return with his wives and considerable wealth, Jacob came to this river in Gilead, northern Jordan. It's called in Genesis 32:22 the river Jabbok, now called Jacob's River. Would Esau kill Jacob and his family? Wisely, Jacob separated out from his herds gifts for Esau. He sent his family and the gifts across the river while he stayed behind and prayed.
That night an unusual man appeared to Jacob. Possibly it was the pre-incarnate Christ himself. He wrestled with Jacob until dawn. While he did not overcome him, he touched Jacob's thigh and put it out of joint. But Jacob would not let him go until he blessed him. The man blessed him and gave Jacob a new name, Israel. He was the father of the Israelite nation. The story ends happily for Jacob and Esau. After Esau forgave Jacob, he became the father of the Edomite culture, with many tribal sons and much goods. The area of the Edomites is very extensive in Jordan today. We will later see one of Esau's villages. Now we're on our way to Jerash.
Hadrian's Arch is the first monument we see in Jerash. The Roman emperor's visit here in 130 A.D. marked a new step in importance for the city. The arch was built to celebrate his arrival. Once much higher, it is being reconstructed by a team of archaeologists. The area was originally named Garsho by Arab Semitic tribes. In 63 B.C., Roman general Pompey conquered Garsho and renamed it Gerasa, annexing it to his province in Syria. Under the Romans, Gerasa joined the Decapolis, an alliance of 10 cities set up to protect Roman trade in Syria and to keep the people subjugated to the Roman Empire. The Decapolis prospered until the expanding Arab Nabatean kingdom became dominant. Rome was powerless to stop their influence. In self-defense, Gerasa adopted the Nabatean culture.
Finally, in 115 A.D., under Emperor Trajan, the Romans rallied and occupied the Nabatean capital in Petra. In celebration, the people of Gerasa built the northern gate at the end of the Carda. Gerasa became a large and important city of the Roman Empire. Not only was it situated in a rich agricultural region, it had a strategic location in the trade routes. The Bible refers to this area. In Matthew 4:25, we find that citizens from the Decapolis joined crowds that followed Jesus. In Matthew 8:28, we find that Christ detoured to the Decapolis and exorcised 2 hermits. He sent a multitude of demons into a herd of swine, which rushed over a cliff to their deaths. The horrified citizens begged him to leave.
Emperor Trajan left prominent landmarks of beautiful buildings, temples, theaters, and baths. He also constructed a long paved road all the way down to Aqaba. The road today is called the King's Highway. The Roman Hippodrome was built in the 2nd century A.D. next to the Arch of Triumph. Here was the popular pastime of horse racing, games, and competitions. The Hippodrome could hold up to 15,000 spectators. These stairs led to the Oval Plaza, perhaps a forum, marketplace, or place of sacrifice. The forum had an unusual shape, not really a true oval. It was probably a graceful attempt to hook up the main Roman street with the site of the sacred Zeus temple nearby. The once spectacular Zeus temple was established first by the Greeks. One of the 7 wonders of the world, the temple is now undergoing reconstruction. It was built in the latter part of the 2nd century on the site of an earlier temple to Artemis. Said to be destroyed by an earthquake, Zeus' temple may have been wrecked by the revolution of a younger generation who wanted to establish Diana worship. Another possibility could be the citizens' refusal to obey the commands of Emperor Hadrian to kill all Jews. It was discovered recently that the Romans then destroyed the temple city.
The South Theater, built in the 1st century, was ancient Gerassa's main gathering place for stage entertainment, like wild animals attacking slaves. The theater accommodated 3,000 to 4,000 spectators and also served as a political forum. Its entry arch is a marvel of ancient engineering. Take one stone out of the arch and the entire arch collapses. Much of the stage area has been restored so that its acoustics are as sharp as in ancient times. Each year a spectacle called the Jerash Festival is held for 2 or 3 weeks in July. The back of the stage was originally 2 stories high. We see only the 1st level today. Interestingly, holes placed strategically in the construction prevented an echo effect. The Cardo was the main colonnaded road through the city. Cross streets were called the Decamanus. Columns on the west side are uneven to complement the buildings behind them. The street is still paved with the original stones.
In the new Byzantine Empire, Christianity dominated the region. A number of the pagan temples of Gerasa were transformed into places of worship. New churches were built from stones and columns of Roman-era deities or collapsed buildings. 3 churches include St. George, St. John the Baptist, and Saints Cosmos and Damian, built during the reign of Emperor Justinian. Here are the best preserved floor mosaics from the 6th century A.D. This church complex has 6 churches side by side. Why so many in close proximity? It seems many Christians were quite prosperous and wanted their own churches. There are at least 32 excavated churches in Jerash. Christianity in its early stages brought simplicity to the churches. The faithful felt simplicity was a sign of a strong faith, while excessive decoration indicated a weak faith. In the Dominos Church, the mosaic floor depicts the lion and elephant, plus other animals that were not necessarily present in Jordan. After the 5th century, no representations of animals were permitted. Instead, decorations consisted of icons of priests and prophets. By the 7th century, under Pope Francisco, all floor mosaics were banned. From the 9th to the 12th centuries, the ceiling became the proper place for decor.
In ancient Gerasa, the Temple of Artemis was one of the most important and beautiful in the city. Dominating a promontory with streets on 3 sides, it glorified Artemis as the goddess and patron of the city. Along the main street, called the Cardo, all the important buildings were constructed. The north tetrapylon, 4 pillars covered with a dome, was especially important to orators of the day. The main street passed through the structure, and politicians would shout to street traffic to their heart's content. The Nymphaeum was one of the most elegant buildings in the ancient city. Constructed in 190 A.D. during the reign of the Emperor Commodius, it was dedicated to the water nymphs of mythology who guarded the different realms of nature. The water flowed from a reservoir and ran out of the mouths of strategically placed lions. Interestingly, the recesses they filled were decorated with fish, the secret symbol of Christianity. The Arabs destroyed the Nymphaeum in 1850 A.D. and chopped off the faces of the lions. The new city of Jerash is populated by Muslims from Russia. It has a sizable group of Circassians who were settled here by the Turkish authorities. They are the personal guards for the king. Interestingly, their formal dress is very similar to that of Russian Cossacks.
As we depart from Jerash, we head west for Eichlon Castle through the mountains of Gilead. A shepherd guides his flock carefully by the road. The balm of Gilead was proverbial for its beautiful pine forests, olive groves, grazing goats, and a place of refuge for Jacob, fleeing from his father-in-law Laban. We stop for a Lebanese lunch at a new outdoor restaurant. The food is wholesome, including lots of salad greens.
About 13 miles west of Jerash, Akhlun Castle, Kalat ar-Rabad, is one of the best preserved examples of medieval Arab and Islamic military architecture in the Middle East. It was built in 1184-85 by Izzi ad-Din, a nephew of Islamic leader Saladin. Saladin was the Syrian and Egyptian ruler who ousted the Crusaders from Jordan in 1189. The castle became the headquarters for the Islamic forces defending the region against Crusader expansion. From here, a chain of beacons and carrier pigeons allowed messages from the Euphrates River to arrive in Cairo in one day. Akhlun boasted of many galleries, towers, staircases, and chambers. Through this opening, boiling oil was poured upon the enemy. The view over the Gilead plains is pleasantly pastoral. Mongols largely destroyed the castle in 1260, but it was immediately rebuilt by Mameluke sultans. Earthquakes in 1837 and 1927 damaged it badly. It finally ceased to be a viable fortress, but it is a great tourist attraction.
That evening, we returned to our Philadelphia hotel. An unexpected photo opportunity was literally right at the door. A large wedding reception was taking place. All the guests, exquisitely dressed, were waiting for the bride and groom to arrive. Near the hotel entrance, a troupe of dancers went through their paces. You could say this was the most enthusiastic wedding reception we had ever seen, involving much synchronized hand clapping and intricate dance stepping. Let's just watch. At last, the beautiful bride and handsome groom arrive. All guests, along with the dancers, welcome them as they slowly make their way up the hotel stairs. Father-in-laws dance with each other, and mothers kiss all the new relatives. All the family members help to pay for the wedding. Houses are built so that the second and third stories can be added for the young couple until they are finally able to afford a house of their own. Families are very close-knit, and divorce is very rare.
Dinner that night was at Khan Zaman, a very exotic restaurant. This was formerly a 19th century complex of stables, storehouses, and residential quarters, now a major tourist attraction. Khan Zaman means once upon a time. The food bars are wonderful. Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine enjoy the world's most varied and elaborate cuisines. All these countries have similar foods. In the Arab world, food is a very important part of the culture, expressing hospitality and generosity. Jordanians are very hospitable. The appetizers are a meal in themselves. Marvelous dips of chickpeas, boiled crushed beans with garlic and lemon juice, meat in bulgur wheat crust, small baked pastries filled with minced meat or white salty cheese, and finally a salad made with freshly chopped parsley, tomatoes, spring onions, and fresh mint. Main courses served in huge kettles include grilled skewered meat kebabs, chunks of lamb served in yogurt sauce over rice, grilled chicken on flatbread covered with onions, or fresh fish on a bed of rice with lemon sauce.
And for entertainment, these precocious youngsters swirl and sway to the music, while their daddy enjoys an after-dinner smoke from an old Turkish water pipe. In the 19th century, this was the site of an Ottoman village. The complex was bought by a prominent Jordanian family whose forefathers moved from Nazareth. The stables, stockhouses, and homes were renovated into a replica of an old Jordanian village with small studios open to watch craftsmen at work. A handicraft center then sells these handmade products to the tourists.
The next day, we are on a tour to Madaba and Kerak Castle. Hazmon is an historic spot where Joshua fought his way to Jericho. We soon arrive in Madaba, the former Moabite town called Medeba. It is mentioned in Joshua 13 as a division of land allotted to the tribes of Israel. Madaba means city of food and wood. Abandoned in the 18th and 19th centuries, the modern town is on the edge of the Madaba Plain, a fertile land of wheat, barley, and tobacco. Camels and sheep are still brought to the market by Bedouin tribes. Surprisingly, Madaba was settled by Christians from Kerak and became a bishopric. Our visit here is to the Greek Orthodox Church of St. George, built on the site of a former Byzantine church. The inside is painted a heavenly blue and is decorated heavily with icons and lamps. Here we see the famous Madaba map from the 7th century. It is the oldest known map of Palestine and Lower Egypt. Our guide, Akif, explains the various sections of the mosaic. Gaza, Africa, Mount Nebo, the Dead Sea and its surrounding hills and towns. The centerpiece is Jerusalem and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
An earthquake in the 8th century damaged some of the map, and the town was soon abandoned after the Persian invasion. It wasn't until the 19th century that the mosaics were uncovered. 2,000 Christians from Kerak moved here and started digging foundations for houses. It was then they discovered the hidden treasure. Though Madaba is a small town today, it has 55 churches. The little schoolhouse reminds us again of the high standards of education promoted by the Jordanians. 97% of the children attend grammar school, and illiteracy is under 20%. One interesting craft in Jordan is sand sculpturing. The man is layering sand of different colors into a glass vase, making intricate designs, an amazing skill.
We are still on the King's Highway traveling to Kerak. In this area, the Bedouins were given large tracts of land. Fortunately, King Hussein is supported by the Bedouin tribes. Their Muslim origin is from the Arabian desert. We are passing through the Ammonite and the Moabite kingdoms. Where did these names come from? Again, we turn to the Bible. In chapter 19 of Genesis, we read the story of Lot, Abraham's nephew. Lot chose to live in Canaan in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, south of the Dead Sea. God planned to destroy these wicked cities. But first he evacuated Lot and his family into Jordan. We remember Lot's wife chose to look back, and as the fire and brimstone destroyed the cities, she turned into a pillar of salt. Lot and his 2 daughters escaped to a cave above Zoar. Fearing they would produce no heirs for the family, the daughters lay with their father. The resulting male children were named Ammon and Moab, later forming Jordan's Ammonite and Moabite territories. These were the people the Israelites encountered on their journey from Egypt into the land of Canaan.
We continue on a limestone plateau of rounded hills. Suddenly, Akif asks us to close our eyes for a surprise. What a spectacular surprise! Suddenly, we are above Wadi Mujib, a vast deep gorge. The result of a devastating volcanic explosion and earthquake, it is part of the Great Rift Valley from East Africa to eastern Turkey. The King's Highway twists and winds its way down almost 3,000 feet. A dam is planned here, which will benefit the whole country of Jordan with its water shortages. This canyon is the Arnon of the Bible. It formed the southern border of the tribe of Reuben and formed the boundary between Moab to the south and Ammon to the north. Here the invading Hebrews under Moses took their first territorial possession. At the bottom of the wadi, we will pass over a bridge spanning the Arnon River.
Rising on the Trojan road, we see evidence of the volcanic rock which spewed over the area. Broken milestones along the way are from 2 AD. They tell how many miles to water by the footstep miles. 2,000 Roman footsteps equaled 1 mile. We pass another Bedouin shepherd. Here are permanent Bedouin houses. Often they are used to store supplies and grain while the Bedouins continue to live in their cooler tents. We begin to encounter a wide plateau and small but thriving villages such as Al-Khazar village, which has a 2nd century Nabatean temple not yet excavated. Here is a Nabatean village in ruins. The Nabateans possibly stem from Nebaioth, the son of Ishmael, recorded in Genesis 25.
The King's Highway continues in southern Moab through Mulek. Moab is known for its independent spirit from centuries past. The Bible devotes an entire chapter to Moab. We have heard of the pride of Moab, his loftiness, his arrogance, and the haughtiness of his heart. We finally arrive on the outskirts of the Moabite crusader city of Karak. From here we get the most complete view of Karak castle and town. It is one of the oldest cities in Jordan. Karak is a market center for the Bedouins and local people. The city and outlying districts serve 100,000 people. The Karakis are often light-skinned and fair-haired, for many are descendants of crusaders. Here, ancient caravans traveled from Egypt to Syria at the time of the biblical kings. It is mentioned in the Bible as Kir, Kir Moab, and Kir Heres.
The Karak castle, built in 1132 by Crusader King Baldwin I of Jerusalem, was one of the many castles from Aqaba to Turkey. This former capital of the Crusader district of Outer Jordan taxed all the passing caravans and food grown in the district, bringing prosperity to Jerusalem. The castle is quite impressive. However, its remnants are more likely to be from the Mameluke period rather than from the Crusaders. Only partially reconstructed, the castle is a jumble of rooms and vaulted passageways. Collapsed ceilings are strewn everywhere, making walking difficult and precarious. All the ceilings were keystone ceilings. Take out one stone and the ceiling collapses. Many stones were taken from Nabatean pagan temples and recycled for use in building this castle. Temple parts were often used in Crusader castles.
After holding out for years against attacking Arabs, it finally fell to Saladin in 1188 AD. 3,000 residents of the castle hid for 8 months, while 500 huge stones per day were hurled at the castle by Saladin. The queen tried to placate Saladin by sending out goodies. She also sent a message that the castle would give up if he promised not to punish the occupants and would grant them freedom. It is said Saladin was not only patient, but a gentleman. The queen was shocked to see the soldiers withdrawing and Saladin riding by himself to the castle. He consented to the queen's wishes. The castle was emptied within the week. After Saladin occupied the castle, he had his engineers repair the damage.
We paid a visit to the hill from which Saladin catapulted 500 stones per day and were surprised to see how far the stones had to travel. With the siege going on for 8 months, it's no wonder there were so many large rocks strewn about. While traveling towards Dana Valley, we used this time to flesh out another character in the Saladin drama, Renaud de Chatillon, who was also connected with the Karak castle. An ambitious and cruel crusader knight, he did more than any single person to destroy Christian Jerusalem. Jailed for 16 years for evil plundering, upon his release, he immediately wrecked a hard-earned truce between Saladin and the Crusader states in Jordan. In spite of the truce, Renaud repeatedly robbed Muslim caravans passing through his domain. He even plundered Muslim ships and set fires in every Arabian port. Not only were Muslims horrified, but the residents of Jerusalem as well. The infuriated Saladin amassed a huge army and captured the city of Tiberias in Palestine. Renaud led his Crusader army against Saladin, but the route had no water. Saladin also started a brush fire in their path. The parched knights were an easy target, and Saladin disposed of most of them. Saladin greeted the few survivors, including Renaud. He confronted Renaud with his grievances, but he refused to repent. With a swipe of the sword, Saladin sent Renaud's head rolling. The new Muslim power of Saladin changed history. Jerusalem was taken by the Arabs.
We are entering Dana Valley, Edomite territory. The Bible says Esau means Edom, so we meet Esau again. 5,000 years ago, Esau built a city in Dana because there was a large copper mine here. Edomites were the first to produce molten copper. It is interesting to see the ancient architecture of this nearly abandoned city. Only about 200 people live here at present. Dana was once the capital city of the Edomite kingdom during the reign of King David and his son Solomon. After Solomon's kingdom declined, Dana became independent. Queen Noor plans to establish a hospital and tourist restaurant here in order to upgrade this area.
We move on to the Petra Mountains. The last rays of the sun catch the burial place of Aaron, the brother of Moses. Moses buried Aaron on Mount Hor. The granite tomb was erected in the 12th century on the Edomite border. From here we go directly to Petra Tabet Zaman village. We will stay here for 2 nights. A 100-year-old agricultural settlement, it has been tastefully renovated into an unusual resort. Traditional architecture of local stone arches, vaults, and houses has been retained. Here you can enjoy the beautiful gardens, Turkish bath, swimming pool, and handicraft studios. The dining room is charming, and the buffet filled with delicious food concoctions. Tomorrow, the rose-red city of Petra.
Nothing can quite prepare one for the splendor of Petra. Its beauty is unparalleled, and its history is as ancient as time. At Irbid, we take a horse and cart into the Sikh, anticipating with wonder the multicolored cliffs rising 600 feet into the air. En route to the Sikh, we can talk a bit about Petra's history. Many associate Petra with the Nabateans, but the area was inhabited long before they arrived, about the 7th century BC. The year was about 1820 BC. The character was our friend Esau, son of Isaac and brother of Jacob. We remember Esau's village.
In time, the descendants and territory occupied by Esau's descendants became the dominant group. In the Bible and in historical texts, the area became known as the land of Edom. Its capital was at Sela, a small plateau behind present-day Petra. Semitic Edomite tribal chiefs emerged here quite early. Kings were chosen before any king reigned over the Israelites, Genesis 36, 31 through 39. But by 1300 BC, the expanding Edomites became nomadic tribes, some settling on the surrounding hills. They were poor masons, but they made exquisite fine pottery, an art they may have passed on to the incoming Nabateans.
By the 6th century BC, the Nabateans, nomadic Arabs from western Arabia, were integrating peacefully with the Edomites. As we mentioned previously, the Nabateans may have descended from Nebaioth, son of Ishmael. The southern Arab tribes, then, are a mixture of Esau and Ishmael. In the Quran, Ishmael is the Arab prophet. In the 2nd century BC, Petra became the capital of the Nabatean kingdom, which extended well into Syria. The inhabitants farmed and raised livestock, camels, sheep, goats, and horses. Their location at a juncture of the major trade routes linked lands near and far. A perfect stopping place with much water and exotic goods, they eventually became wealthy by offering protection services to caravans and taxing goods passing through their city. In their domestic architecture, their houses were carved into the towering rock walls, as well as their tombs and temples. The Khazna treasury is the most famous and exquisite of their works.
Their other great artistic achievement was their delicate thin-walled pottery. Its pinkish color, decorated with dark flowers and lions, became an immediate popular commodity. Soon they were producing large quantities, holding sway from Damascus to the Negev. But all that changed when the Roman warrior Pompey arrived on the scene in 64 BC. With his legions, he established the province of Syria and formed the Decapolis League of city-states, including Petra. But Petra made a fatal mistake when it sided with the Parthians in their war against Rome. Petra paid tribute to the Romans, and to add insult to injury, was invaded twice by Herod the Great when it fell behind in the payments. Eventually, the Romans took over and Romanized Petra, including enlarging the theater and paving the main cardo or street. Greco-Roman touches can be seen here and there.
With the spread of Christianity in the 4th century A.D., Petra became the seat of a bishopric. Some pagan buildings, such as the Urn tomb, were turned into churches. By the 7th century, with the invasion of the Muslims, it passed into obscurity, known only to the Bedouin inhabitants, and purposely unrevealed for fear of foreign influx. Knowledge of Petra emerged hundreds of years later when a Swiss convert to Islam heard rumors of fantastic ruins in the mountains of Wadi Musa. In 1812, dressed as an Arab, he pretended to have made a vow to slaughter a goat in sacrifice at Aaron's tomb. En route, he intended to see as much as possible of the hidden city. He pulled off the bluff and announced to the world that he had found the ruins of Petra.
It is time for lunch and a much-needed rest at the local restaurant. After lunch, our group climbed the 1,000 steps to see the monastery. The monastery is similar in design to the Kazne treasury, but far bigger. It was built in the 3rd century and later used as a church. The views from the monastery are stunning. Below is the Wadi Araba, stretching from the Dead Sea to Aqaba. To the southwest is the peak of Mount Hor and Aaron's tomb.
As we head back to the Sikh and our transportation, we are pleasantly surprised to find a Hollywood movie being shot on location by Universal Studios. It is a remake of the Sinbad legends and appears exciting with its authentic background of Petra. We were afforded a carriage for the return trip out of the valley. Most visitors had to walk or ride horses.
Before we leave this area, there is some prophetic biblical information that we must share. Isaiah 63 indicates that a divine personage will come from Edom with red garments from ancient Bozrah, 25 miles north of Petra. Clearly a reference to this area. In the text, this person with blood-dyed garments indicates he has come from the battle to free his captives, because the day of his vengeance and the year of his redeemed has come. Many Christians firmly believe that Petra will be a hiding place from the Antichrist for Jewish people during the tribulation period. Could this divine person be Jesus Christ, coming to Jordan from victory in the Battle of Armageddon to rescue his redeemed Jewish remnant at Petra?
In Mark chapter 13, verse 14, Jesus warned that when the abomination of desolation, the Antichrist, stands where he should not in the Jewish temple, the Jews are to flee to the mountains, for there will be tribulation such as there was not from the beginning of creation. It is noteworthy that there are thousands of caves in Petra, which could be used for temporary housing. And it is also rumored that there is a cache of food hidden which can feed thousands. After this thrilling experience, we are taken to a domed building to see the Spring of Moses. It is said to be one of the claimed locations of the traditional rock Moses struck in anger when the Israelites complained about lack of water. The spring gushed forth and is still flowing today. However, because Moses did not give God the glory for the water, he lost the privilege of going into the promised land. Later, we will be on Mount Nebo, where Moses looked over to this land.
We are en route to Wadi Rum. The desert highway must be navigated with caution because it is ordinarily heavy with truck traffic and the drivers are not too careful. We've reached Ras An Neja, the highest point on the desert highway. From here we can see the route of the wandering Israelites on their way to the Promised Land. The land falls away abruptly to the Quiwira Plain, a pink sandy desert 2,000 feet below. Broken pinnacles of rock rise up in contrast to the barren desert. Nomadic villages are established by the government, which also supplies electricity, schools, and a mosque. Wadi Rum is the most spectacular of the whole network of wadis, or valleys, and offers the easiest Bedouin route to and from the Arabian Peninsula to the south. We are to camp in tents for one night in the wadi. Lawrence of Arabia often came to this location to clear his senses.
A train rumbles by, not for passengers, but for tons of phosphate from the El Hassa mines. It will be taken to the Aqaba port for export to India, Pakistan, and Indonesia. Exposure to rain and wind has sculpted the sandstone into weird shapes of arches and giant pillars. Hidden beneath the surface is a crust of Precambrian granite. Above is a varicolored mixture of sandstone of different geological periods, textures, and colors. Each crust is separated by hundreds of years of primitive life.
Near the park entrance, we are taken to rock outcroppings on which are written ancient cryptic messages in Nabatean, Mineran, and Talmudic. Most common are the hundreds of Talmudic inscriptions from the 5th century BC to the 7th century AD. They were either petitions to Nabatean deities or messages of love or grief. Or they could be written by travelers to Syria, communicating to travelers behind them. Many are in dialects not known today, but the travelers then were well educated and literate.
Fossil traces of marine species are numerous everywhere, proving the existence of tidal oceans that recurrently inundated much of Jordan. Cataclysm, which created the Great Rift Valley from East Africa to southern Turkey, also tossed up layers of rock here. As the rocks settled, they were rearranged in strange and complex formations. Vast and echoing and godlike is how T.E. Lawrence described Wadi Rum in his book, 7 Pillars of Wisdom. The present inhabitants are the Bedouin tribes of the Hawittit, one of the largest tribes in Jordan, claiming descent from Mohammed and the Nabateans.
T.E. Lawrence returned here many times during the Arab Revolt of 1917-18. Lawrence was a British soldier and writer. One of the most adventurous characters of World War I, he wrote of his fabulous exploits in Arabia. Educated at Oxford University in archaeology and the Near East, he was sent by the British government to Egypt to head the military intelligence. Lawrence became passionately devoted to the Arab cause against Turkey. His military genius led to Turkey's defeat, and he was hailed by the Arabs as the uncrowned king of Arabia.
A rover has been provided for a little excursion into the wadi. We are intrigued by the beautiful red color of the sand, a result of the erosion of the red Cambrian layer of rock. It is lonely and vast here. No sign of life except tire tracks, some camel droppings, a lone white desert flower, and the shriveled skin of a young camel. We take a group picture in front of a rock outcropping.
In camp at last, a Bedouin tent is set up and ready for a social and dining area. Akif serves us all a refreshing drink and takes time out after a strenuous day. The green sleeping tents are furnished with thick pads and comfortable pillows. But we would rather take an afternoon nap under the big top, passing the time watching a dung beetle scamper for food. Some ambitious members have climbed this monstrous outcropping to survey the valley and sing its praises.
In the afternoon, a group goes on a desert expedition for a few hours. Akif brings the group to see fascinating landscapes and ancient writing. He explains that they are Semitic in origin. This image shows a man and a woman and a goat. This is symbolic of marriage. The characters were scratched into the rock over 2,000 years ago. Evidence of prehistoric man has been found here also. The Nabateans were also very active in this region. They were not only traders, but masters of water resources. They built aqueducts from springs and constructed several dams.
That evening, the table is set with china and glass goblets. The food is delicious, as are all Arabian dishes. Akif and a local troubadour serenade us with ancient Arabic love songs. Toe tapping is permitted to the livelier tunes. We sleep under a canopy of bright stars. A desert sunrise is an exquisite experience. The red rock outcroppings actually glow with intense hues. But at breakfast, the flies are up before us. Nevertheless, it is a beautiful experience, one perhaps few are privileged to enjoy. Our rover is stuck. If you want to know how to get out of sand, ask a Bedouin.
It's back to Wadi Rum town. Our gear is reloaded into our bus. We video a few interesting residents. A Bedouin family jockeys for position in front of the camera. Leaving Wadi Rum, Akif stops to let us admire a herd of young camels herded by a 15-year-old Bedouin. The camels are about 3 years old. They must be at least 4 before they can be ridden. A good camel can be worth several $1,000s.
Back on the desert highway, the trucks are more numerous as we near Aqaba. In Roman times, this was the main road from Damascus to Egypt and Palestine. Aqaba is situated at the tip of the Gulf of Aqaba, the Red Sea's slender eastern finger. The mountains here are rich in phosphates. A Bible verse from 1 Kings 9:26 probably refers to today's Aqaba. And King Solomon made a navy of ships in Ezion Geber, on the shore of the Red Sea, in the land of Edom. Excavations west of Aqaba on the Jordan-Israel border have revealed copper smelters, no doubt Solomon's. Smelting was carried on here from the 10th to the 5th centuries BC.
Balmy winter weather and an idyllic setting have made Aqaba Jordan's aquatic playground. The water is clear for excellent scuba diving and snorkeling. Although the town itself has little interest, some good, reasonable hotels and restaurants make Aqaba worth visiting for a few days. Aqaba is quiet by Mediterranean standards, in spite of the growing numbers of German, Italian, Scandinavian, and English tourists. The loudest thing here is the chanting at the local mosque.
Across from the mosque is the ancient Aqaba castle. It is from the Mameluke period, 600 years ago. Mamelukes were originally Saladin's white prisoners who grew into an army and a sizable force. They were succeeded by the Turkish Ottomans, and the Turks were ousted during World War I with the help of Lawrence of Arabia. Sharif Hussein Ban Ali, ancestor of the present king and the leader of the Arab revolt, resided here for some time.
The town is very family-oriented and deeply conservative. In the court of the Aqaba castle, we see an example of family life. Social customs dictate a largely indoor life for the women, but once a week they have ladies' day out. The women gather at the ancient Aqaba castle, sing some songs, and exchange gossip. The children come along with them, but appear rather bored by the whole thing.
As we leave, Akif informs us that from this castle, the whole Gulf of Aqaba was under surveillance. In 1967, Aqaba became a large port. King Hussein traded almost 4,000 square miles of desert with Saudi Arabia for an additional 7.5 miles of coastline. Today, it is Jordan's most strategically important city. The country depends on imports for about 70% of its food needs. Jordan suffered a crushing blow to its economy during the Gulf War. Aqaba's historic name was Ayla, from which Eilat, Israel's port city, was derived. T.E. Lawrence took the Gulf from the Ottoman sultans in 1917. At the end of World War I, Britain ceded it to Jordan rather than to Saudi Arabia. Modern Eilat can be seen directly across the bay, and Saudi Arabia can be seen directly across the heavily guarded border.
The main appeal for many visitors to Aqaba is its offshore coral reefs. A glimpse of this spectacular show can be seen in the local aquarium in the Marine Sciences Center. Rocks are covered with barnacles, chitons, limpets, and periwinkles, which can adapt themselves to various depths during the tidal ranges. In its deep water, so close to the shore, there is a wide variety of fish, including the whale shark, the world's largest fish. The abundance of plankton here attracts them. Other species found in the Gulf are lionfish, clownfish, triggerfish, goby, and cornetfish. There are also garden eels and hermit crabs, an elusive hide-and-seeker. Although the Gulf suffers pressure from industrial developments and phosphate leakage into the sea, the waters have a remarkable resilience. They have much to offer to the underwater diver and photographer.
We are taken to the Alibaba Terrace restaurant for lunch. The Arabian Nights hero got what he wanted by saying, "Open sesame. Let's see if it works for us." We got it. The restaurant is noted for its delicious mazgouf, or grilled fish. Several hours later in Amman, we are taken into the opulent first-class neighborhoods of the elite. The houses are beautiful in their architecture, and most are guarded with security gates along with armed patrols.
In the 1970s, Jordan benefited from the oil in the Gulf. 28% of the labor force was working in the Gulf, and their abundant salaries were the largest single contributor to the payment on its debt. The country seems to be making many internal adjustments. Much of the perceived wealth in Jordan represents the savings of 300,000 expelled Kuwaitis and Jordanians from the Gulf War, and the resulting boom in construction following their return.
An elaborate blue mosque, stunning in its architecture, has been dedicated to the grandfather of King Hussein, King Abdullah. It was built during the early 1980s. Nearby is the impressive House of Parliament, the administrative center of Jordan. We now move into the middle-class section of Amman. Here are the teachers, professors, doctors, electricians, businessmen, and tradesmen. The classes rarely, if ever, socialize with one another. Their houses, constructed almost exclusively of white sandstone, exhibit little outside decoration.
The city at a distance resembles block upon block of square or oblong structures 3 to 4 stories high. In the apartment section of Amman, following the influx of expatriates after the Gulf War, rents in Amman tripled. Amman now has a population of 1,200,000. Many people prefer to take bank loans and buy homes rather than rent. Most have a big investment in lands, taking on a 30-year mortgage. Or they live in inconspicuous houses or apartments while saving up for a larger villa or a grove of fruit or olive trees in the Jordan Valley.
The next day we wake early to a beautiful sunrise. This is our last day, but it will be a full one. The Citadel for archaeological sites, Queen Noor's Bani Hamid Museum, King Abdullah's Palace, an art museum, and then west to Mount Nebo, a camel ride and a swim in the Dead Sea. Whew. We begin our tour in the old part of the city where the architecture is more varied. Here some buildings have attractive arches relieving the otherwise monotonous architecture. Across from this we see an example of ancient Roman Amman in a section of the Cardo. The adjacent amphitheater was in use between 109 BC and 77 AD. While the ancient city center is mainly buried, the large theater shows that Amman was a Roman city of great size and importance. Seating about 6,000 people, it is still in use today.
Adjacent to the amphitheater is the small folklore museum, which tries to present a cross-section of Jordanian life. The Bedouin tent represents desert living. The statue of a Circassian soldier in traditional dress represents the Ottoman influence. Town life displays the living room of a fine house, while the simpler houses use rugs and hangings for decor.
We're off to the Citadel to explore Amman's archaeological history. From here we can easily see that Amman is a city of hills. The Citadel is a treasure trove of antiquity. On a raised platform sits the remains of the Temple of Hercules, dedicated to the Emperor Aurelius, 161 to 180 AD. Restoration is in progress. Several Arab families were visiting the Citadel today, and they all posed willingly for the American tourists. One dear father offered our whole group fresh pears from his garden. Nearby in a cave, beneath a 6th century Byzantine church, are the remains of the 3rd century altar, when Christianity was not yet an official religion. At another site is a 9th century Ammonite watchtower, the oldest building in Amman and the Middle East. There were 22 such towers surrounding Amman. Here is where the Ammonites fought with King David's army, recorded in 2 Samuel 11. David deliberately sent his soldier Uriah to the hottest part of the battle so that he would perish. Then David married the widow Bathsheba, a shameful part of Israel's history.
From here we pay a visit to the Bani Hamida house for the needs of women and children. A work of the Queen Noor Foundation is the Women's Weaving Project, employing 900 women in 12 villages. It takes 2 months to hand prepare the wool and weave the articles. Their rugs, wall hangings, and woven bags are sold by smart shops in New York, Paris, London, and Germany. From here we head for King Abdullah's palace. He was a Hashemite who wanted to establish a broad Arab kingdom under his family. After a 23-year struggle to unify a country in chaos, he became Jordan's first king in 1946. This is the grandfather of King Hussein. Unfortunately, King Abdullah was assassinated after he took office. Below the Abdullah Palace is the house of British officer Peak Pasha. He aided King Abdullah in expanding his army into a sizable force. The building is now a museum of modern art. Lawrence of Arabia lived in this house for 6 months and wrote 3 books about it.
Luncheon in an exclusive Bedouin restaurant is a delight. Huge, ornately sculpted copper trays serve as tables. The lamb and chicken shish kebabs are delicious.
What are you going?
We're off to Mount Nebo, which is a little over 6 miles from Amman. It has been a place of pilgrimage since earliest Christian times, when a small church was erected beneath the present Franciscan Church of Moses and the Prophets. A church group sings, "In Jerusalem, Yeshua," as we all gaze into that promised land which we too long for. And Moses went up from the plains of Moab unto the mountain of Nebo to the top of Pisgah, that is over against Jericho. And the Lord said unto him, This is the land which I swore unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob, saying, I will give it unto their seed. I have caused you to see it with thine eyes, but thou shalt not go over thither. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. Deuteronomy 34, 4 and 5. The Bible says that God himself buried Moses, and no man knows the place of burial.
Outside is an appropriate sculpture of a snake on a bronze pole designed by Fantoni of Florence. It symbolized the snake and pole Moses erected in the wilderness so that those who gazed on it would be cured from poisoning. It is symbolic of the Christian cross of Christ, who heals our sinful hearts. At the entrance to the church is this quote from John 1:17. For while the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. The Franciscans bought the site in the 1930s and have excavated the ruins of a church and monastery inside. The Etheria Church dates from the 6th and 7th centuries, named after a woman pilgrim who made the journey here from Jerusalem. Its principal mosaics date from 531 AD and depict hunting and pastoral scenes, including exotic species once plentiful in Jordan but now extinct. Other mosaics have been lifted to the walls for preservation. An ancient memorial to Moses is near the altar of the church. The Catechism School is still used. The Franciscan Church was built in 1952. We are told that an excavation nearby is to search for the tomb of Moses and the Ark of the Covenant, which was taken from the Holy of Holies in the Jerusalem Temple.
We return to the slopes of Nebo and meet a colorful band of cameleers for an excursion by camel. The camel is not pleased about this ride, or maybe it's the flies. The ride takes about 2 hours, and we travel across dry areas and green valleys. Some of us sing "Row, row, row your boat," and "This land is my land." The cameleer offers to teach us another song in Arabic. Later, we asked Akif what it meant. He laughed. It means we are foolish and stupid. After that unkind cut, we stop at a stream for a picnic lunch. Joining us is a herd of more polite sheep and goats. And the camels get their well-earned treat. Along the way, we get excellent close-up pictures of the sheep, which are squeezed in a tight mass to get every bit of shade from a lone tree. This area is dry and barren, with erosion caused by shrinkage after this area was covered with salt water. In winter, the rains run off the mountains and the side valleys and pour into the Dead Sea.
We've reached the Dead Sea at last. Akif stops the bus and we get out for a picture. The Dead Sea today is 50 miles long and about 9 miles wide. Our group wastes no time wading in to feel the buoyancy of the water. It's a popular place for visitors because of its unique waters, because of the climate, and because of the historic and biblical legacies in the surrounding areas. Here is the lowest spot on Earth, 1,290 feet below sea level. Some are going to coat themselves with the medicinal mud, which is rich in mineral content. We're having a hard time recognizing who's who. When the mud is washed off, the skin is incredibly soft.
That evening, all squeaky clean, we enjoy our last meal at the water's edge. We are in a reflective mood. If this were anywhere else in the world, it would be crawling with tourists. But with its undeserved reputation as a barren region of fanatics, it is a surprise to visitors to find that Jordan is not only safe and fascinating, but the inhabitants are among the most hospitable in the world. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you.